Welcome into Hoosier Game Day. It is week 8. Crazy to think about that we are already into our 8th show. I'm Jack Edwards alongside Kylee Metzger as always. Kylee, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Jack?
I'm doing very, very well.
Good.
This week's matchup, Indiana versus Rutgers. Indiana 3-4, Rutgers 3-3 coming off of a bye week.
Yeah.
Both these teams won the first 3 games of their seasons and they have not won since. Someone has to win this game, correct?
Somebody has to win. There's no ties in college football. I will say though, both of these teams are looking tomorrow to lose their losing streak, break their losing streak.
Yeah.
Both teams want it just as badly.
Yeah.
Both teams have a lot to improve on. I personally think Rutgers might want it a little more. They're going to have a homecoming crowd behind them, so that's going to be big. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting, but it's going to be interesting.
Very interesting to see what happens for this matchup. We've got a great show lined up for you. Zion Brown talking about things on the Rutgers side of things, Max Parker on the Indiana side of things, Kylee Corman with a very interesting story developing for Indiana. Now, before we get into all of that, execution has been something that is emphasized a lot by Tom Allen, but it's been a struggle for them to do that all season long. Their offense is potentially, though, developing a new game changer going forward. We talked about him last week. Let's talk about him again. Here's more from Carlo Barone.
Indiana's offensive arsenal is surely loaded with plenty of talent. From big physical backs to quick runners who are dangerous on the outside, the Hoosiers have quite an interesting group to work with. But the execution has not lived up to Tom Allen's expectations.
To me, it's about consistent execution. I'll keep saying it because it doesn't change. You can't go through and be effective on either side of the ball without doing the little things correctly.
Luckily for Allen, Indiana has players that can make game-changing plays on offense. Look no further than true freshman running back Jalen Lucas.
I see myself, when I get the ball in space, I'm willing to use my speed to get around defenders. But mainly, I feel like when I get the opportunity on the field, I'm just going to always take advantage of it. And I just thank my O-line from opening up big gaps and all that. And you see I have explosive runs.
Lucas has taken advantage of the opportunities he's been given on the field, with Allen playing him more snaps and giving him more touches each week has gone on. As a smaller running back, Lucas has really had to fight for his opportunities, a mentality that he learned from his new teammate, Sean Shivers.
Not too many people going to look at us because of our size, but I feel like, man, we just use that as an advantage and just always had a chip on our shoulder and have that edge to go every day. But Sean teach me everything, man. I learned the college game from Sean, like the run the rail, just hit it hard and just use our quickness as our ability.
Lucas will continue to look for more opportunities for big plays as Indiana looks to take a more balanced approach on offense. The Hoosiers will look to move back to 500 with a trip to Piscataway to take on Rutgers this weekend. For the Hoosier Network, I'm Carlo Barone.
Make sure to follow Carlo Barone all season long for your IU football content. Well, Zion and I are in the studio today. We're talking Rutgers football, and Zion, we're going to get right into it. Rutgers offense has been struggling, coming off a 3-game losing streak. And on top of that, head coach Greg Schiano fired offensive coordinator Sean Gleason, during the bye week. And with an extra week to prepare, do you think that Rutgers can, improve in this offensive side, with their new interim offensive coordinator?
They certainly have the talent, I believe, to improve with this new offensive coordinator. So Nunzio Campanile is the new OC, the interim for now, and he's coming up from the tight end coach position. So he's going to have his work cut out for him, just figuring out this offense, figuring out how they can get something going, because they just struggled protecting the ball and moving the ball downfield so far this season. That's something the Scarlet Knights are going to want to, shore up going into the later half of the year.
Well, something else that's kind of, a little bit up in the air, kind of questionable for a lot of people, especially Rutgers fans. Greg Schiano has not revealed who's going to be playing quarterback tomorrow. There's 3 that they have in their toolbox, and they're 3 pretty good ones. And, I think my question is, how is Indiana, going to tackle that, knowing that Rutgers is kind of up in the air with their quarterback, who they're going to start, but knowing that they have 3 kind of in their wheelhouse? How do you think they're approaching that?
Rutgers is not sure what they want to do. I'm not sure if Greg Schiano right now knows who's going to be the quarterback tomorrow. So Indiana has to be prepared for whatever. You got those 3 quarterbacks. Noah Vedril's the one that has the most experience. He's been starting at Rutgers for a few years now. He's been hurt most of this year, but he just came in and he struggled in his first game, really throwing passes a couple weeks ago against Nebraska. You've got Evan Simon, more of a pocket passer, stationary guy, he struggled as well when he's been in. And then the third guy is Gavin Wimsett, a recruit 4-star player out of Kentucky they have a lot of hope for. They want him to eventually take the reins and be that guy for them. But right now, he hasn't really shown that this year. And so with this Rutgers team, we've seen it in almost every game. They've played multiple guys at quarterback. I would expect more of the same against Indiana, where the Hoosiers had to be ready for more than one guy to be taking snaps in that game.
Zion, is this the perfect storm for the Scarlet Knights tomorrow? They're hosting arguably the worst team in the Big Ten. They're going to have a homecoming crowd behind them. They have healthy quarterbacks. You know, is this the perfect mix for a win?
If you're Rutgers, that's what you're thinking. They're coming off the bye. Like you said, it's homecoming. It might be the largest fanfare they have all season long. And so this should be a win for Rutgers. Everything leans towards that. It's just a matter of, can they move the ball down the field at a high enough rate to where they can defeat the Hoosiers. But if you're a Rutgers fan, if you're a Rutgers player or coach, you would be highly disappointed if you took a loss to Indiana this week.
Well, it'll be interesting seeing the quarterback battle tomorrow as well. But speaking of quarterbacks, Indiana has some interesting developments this week in that department. For more on that, here's Kylee Corman.
Thanks, Kylee. It was announced Monday that Indiana quarterback Jack Tuttle would be entering the transfer portal. Although the redshirt senior has been riding this season at QB2, he has been a key player for the Hoosiers throughout his time here. Loved by fans and players, Tuttle was a team-nominated captain at the start of the season and owns the phrase Tuttle time, coined by Hoosier fans as an endearing, hopeful saying. Tuttle has stepped up in many times of need, including Indiana's historic 2020 season after starting quarterback Mike Penix tore his ACL against Maryland. He finished that game with a win, as well as beating number 16 Wisconsin in Madison. He threw for 201 yards in the Outback Bowl and was named the team's LEO Player of the Year. Tuttle was called up again after another Penix injury in 2021, where he played 6 games, including opponents number 10 Michigan State and number 5 Ohio State. After Penix left for Washington, it was assumed that Tuttle would be up for QB1 until Indiana acquired Missouri quarterback Connor Bazelak. All summer there was a competition for QB1, but Bazelak ultimately won the starting position. Bazelak has suffered many struggles during this year, leaving people wondering if there would be some Tuttle time, but he has yet to make an appearance. While Indiana still has Tuttle at its disposal, it is unlikely we will see Tuttle in the rest of the 2022 season. So what does this mean for Indiana? It is now even more important for the offensive line to keep Bazelak healthy with a shorter quarterback core. It also means there is a chance to see potential action from Dexter Williams, who has yet to see a game since his arrival in 2020. Most importantly, it means the Hoosiers are losing a team leader, which is not a loss the program can afford right now. For more on Indiana's matchup, let's go back to the desk with Jack.
Thank you very much, Kylee. We are now here with the one, the only, Max Parker. Max, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jack. Always good to see you here.
Yes, good to see you as well.
Yeah, let's stick with that.
Maryland, that game, Indiana versus Maryland. Ugly in large parts, interesting in large parts. A game that I feel like there was a big, feeling disappointment around the program after that one. That game got away. Your perspective, what happened in that one?
Well, I mean, it kind of happened right off the jump with a pick on the first offensive play for Indiana. That just kind of left a sour feeling. And, you know, with the Hoosiers playing against Maryland, you knew that they were going to have to put up points to keep pace. Mm-hmm. And the surprising thing was they ended up being able to, ending up at that kind of mid-30 score, being able to keep pace. And, that's going to be a different story against Rutgers, mm-hmm. who's a squad that has really struggled to put up points as of late. But you can't just have those mistakes that they continue to have on this 4-game losing streak. You just can't.
You think about the interceptions, the first play of each half, the devastating fumble late on in the fourth quarter. I want to flip the script a little bit, talk about the defensive side of things in that game. Really unfortunate injury for Talia Tagovailoa. Mm-hmm. Goes out of the game, backup comes in. The offensive flow, though, of Maryland doesn't really decrease. How disappointing was that, and how, I guess, bad long-term does that view for you in terms of the defensive side of things?
I mean, it's not great, but it's not surprising either, because when this Indiana defense is missing their core anchor in Cam Jones, who's a guy who's typically up the middle or in that kind of middle of the defense area. He's the guy who you would oftentimes count on to kind of keep a spy on that mobile QB, and having a leader like that, and then also in other areas of the secondary, you're playing a lot of young guys like Philip Dunham, and that's due to injuries and kind of struggles from guys like Tywan Mullen, Jalen Williams. And so, again, it's a similar thing where it's like, it's disappointing, but I'm not surprised given how Indiana's played all year and some of the injuries to the personnel that they have.
Injuries as well impacted the offensive line a lot.
Yeah.
There was the big change at the offensive line coaching position. For you, did you see a marked difference from game to game in terms of that one?
I'll say this, and I talked about this a little bit last week in a story I did on the switch of offensive line coaching. It's the same personnel. So you can't, there's really not that much change. Sure, you can have a little bit of philosophy changes, but at the end of the day, you're midway through the season. And Rod Carey said this. He was like, when someone asked, what has to change? He's like, I don't know, guys, because it's the middle of the season. It's the same personnel, and it's a group that's really struggled. So, sure, there was maybe a little bit of that kind of first game after a coaching change, like motivation, maybe you could call it. But there's not much faith behind that this group can really rally because, again, it's the same personnel. And in pressers, Mike Kadick has talked about this a lot. It's not that they're not trying. This group is giving their all. Their quarterback really has faith in them. Bazelak really has faith in this offensive line, and they trust each other. At least that's what they're saying, and I believe them. And they're really practicing hard. They're giving it their all. It's just, it's really tough. Yeah. They're really struggling.
On the quarterback situation, we got kind of with the backup, Jack Tuttle, potentially even the program from Kylee. I want to talk about the starting guy, Connor Bazelak. He had obviously the interceptions, first play of each half. Not getting Indiana off to a strong offensive start.
Yeah.
Is his job in question at all, in your perspective?
That's a great question, Jack. I've asked myself that a few times during games. Especially after that first pick, right off the jump last week. How many mistakes in a row does it take for them to put in someone like, and last week it was Jack Tuttle, but I also was wondering last week, do they give Dexter Williams a try? I think they stick with Bazelak for the rest of the year. Maybe if there's something like a blowout, they give Williams a try. But this is a guy who's got the potential. We've seen that against Missouri. When he was at Missouri. And then there have been flashes. You think back to that Illinois game where he was really able to unlock this deep ball that Indiana fans haven't seen since when Michael Penix was feeling very healthy. You think back to some of those plays to Ty Freifogel against Ohio State in that golden 2020 season. So he has the ability to. It's just tough to establish a rhythm. Again, it feels like everything's kind of playing together, It's tough to establish that rhythm when you have a shaky offensive line, when you have all these other parts that are just up in the air.
Yeah, so we've kind of talked about a lot of the factors around the game. Yeah. Predictions now. I'll let you go first.
Okay.
Prediction for this game.
Well, the line right now is the over-under line's at 48. Indiana is, no, let's phrase it this way. Rutgers is favored by 3. 48, just kind of looking back at the last few scores for Rutgers, it's a lot, it seems like, which is funny because it's not that much. Let's go 23-18, Rutgers. I was trying to find something. I was going to go originally 25-19. That feels a little too whack and out in the air for me. Let's go 23-18. How do we get there? I don't know.
No idea.
I don't know.
I'm going to give you the ugliest score prediction you've ever gotten in your entire life.
I'm so ready.
16-13.
That's gross.
16-13.
That's disgusting.
3 field goals for the Hoosiers, 2 for for Rutgers. And that becomes the deciding factor there. I am going to say an Indiana win, though. I think that, a lot of the perspective from Rutgers is going to be, worst team they're playing against in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Indiana, I feel like they shot themselves in the foot half dozen times last time out against Maryland. So for them to kind of respond to that with just the ugliest, make yourself 4-4 again. This team, when they were 3-0, we were like, this is the worst 3-0 team in history.
Yeah.
Now they're going to be the worst 4-4 team in history, worst team that's 500.
Yes.
And just last thing from you, Max.
Well, really quick, to ugly scores.
To ugly scores.
We got what 23-18 and 16-13.
Those are
disgusting.
ugly. Those are ugly scores.
Yeah.
The last thing from you, for a bowl game, this is the last. It has to be a win.
Yeah. It's again, been saying this for the past few weeks. It's been an uphill climb since that first few losses against Cincinnati, and then you go to Nebraska and drop that game. You're knocking off a few now with this loss against Maryland. You're knocking off those games where it was like, okay, we can do this. This Indiana squad telling themselves, guys, we can do this. We have these games left on the schedule where we can feasibly pull off a win. Those games are quickly disappearing, and this is kind of the last one where you think to yourself, okay, there's a shot. Maybe against Michigan State, maybe against Purdue, but these are the last few games where Indiana fans are looking at the schedule and thinking, you know what, there might be a chance.
Well, let's swing back to the other two members of our hosting panel. Guys, Kylee, Zion, who've you got?
Thanks, Jack. And Zion, let's hear your prediction for tomorrow. So we'll start with you.
We've talked about how both of these offenses have been struggling, and I expect that to continue this week. So I am going to predict a 20-17 ball game with Rutgers coming out on top at home in their homecoming. What do you say?
I'm gonna be very close with you. I'm gonna say Rutgers 24, Indiana 17. And I also agree. I think that the homecoming crowd is going to be a huge contender in their performance. I also think their quarterback, position is looking good. Their offense, I think, is going to improve. I'm going all improvements, all in on improvements on Rutgers. I'm confident in them. I mean, I want IU to prove me wrong, but maybe they will in the next couple weeks.
Right.
Maybe tomorrow, but we're not sure. But that is going to be it for our show this week. For Zion, Max, Jack, Kylee, our producer Lauren Booher, I've been Callie Metzger. We thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you next week.